Hey, this is Brittany, CEO and founder of Talented Teams Consulting, and I am back with day 3 of this 30-day or 6-week series where I'm talking with you about ways to build your HR career with intention, especially if you are an HR department of one. I feel that oftentimes HR department of one professionals feel as if you are stuck or capped or unable to grow your career because there's literally nowhere else for you to grow. But I believe that you are in fertile ground. You are in the perfect position to create your own career path, to create your own career trajectory. And so today we're going to talk about ways that you can continue to build your career with intention. So in yesterday's video, I was talking with you about making sure that you can control what you can control. And previously, I talked with you also about making sure that you are intentional with everything that you do. Another part of being able to be successful as an HR department of one or as an HR professional is making sure that you are clear on who you are there to serve. I think that oftentimes people often get it twisted when it comes to, okay, so who is HR there to really participate for? I feel that sometimes employees believe that HR is only on the side of the employer. And sometimes senior leaders believe that HR professionals should only work on behalf of the business. I believe that both of those ideas are completely false. If anything, HR is there to serve both sides. Think of it like a scale. HR is there to be that balancing beam, that scale between what the employees want and what the business needs. So making sure that they are there to be that neutral third party. I believe that the biggest issues come when employers believe or employees believe that HR is pro-employee, pro-employer, or one or the other consistently. Of course, there are going to be times where the HR department needs to advocate on behalf of the employee or needs to defend the employer's decisions. But it's important to remember that as an HR professional, you are responsible for making sure that that balancing act remains in place. Today, we're going to talk about the different areas of the organization that you serve. Like I said, as an HR department of one, you're not just serving your senior leadership team, and you're not just at the beck and call of your employees, and you're certainly not there to serve yourself. But who are you there to serve? So that's what we're going to talk about today. As a 15-year HR professional, I have a tendency to look at everything from an HR lens, whether it's workplace issues, family issues, or things that I just see on TV and the media. I kind of see it in an HR lens, so to speak. So that reminds me of the other day, I had a stay interview with my daughter. So just kind of level set, a stay interview in a workplace is typically one where it's the opposite of an exit interview, where you typically interview a person on their way out the door. A stay interview, or what I like to call them, is HR follow-ups. You're kind of having a conversation proactively in response to an employee, being in place for a while, or they are shining in a way that they typically don't shine, or you just really want to kind of get into their mind to say, okay, so how are things going? Why are you still here? What are some things that we can do to support you? So I feel like I had a stay interview with my 6-year-old one morning because she had an uncharacteristically great morning. Now, we have 3 small kids. Our kids are 4, 6, and 8 right now. And so my 6-year-old, she's also a middle child. And so sometimes she's kind of temperamental, as all 6-year-olds will be. And she had a really, really great morning. And I stopped her on her way out the door. My husband was getting ready to take her to school. So I asked her, hey, you had a really great morning today. So tell me what's going on. Well, why did you have a great morning? And she's very precocious. So she says, well, I was able to wake up first. I got into the bathroom first. I was able to brush my teeth, and I was able to eat what I wanted for breakfast, and I was able to get my clothes and my shoes on first. And she was really happy about it. She routed it off much easier than I thought that she was going to. And in that moment, I realized that that's just what we need to do when we're talking to our employees, when we're talking to our leaders, when we're talking to ourselves even. If you see things that are going great or things that are going not so great, you need to consistently check in with them to see how things are going. So during this conversation, we're going to be talking about who you are serving. We're going to be looking at it from the perspective of being able to level set, get on the level of who you're talking to, and always considering your audience. Understanding who you serve is so, so important because you want to make sure that you don't make decisions in a vacuum. Everything sounds fine in theory, but you know the people that you serve. You know the people that are in your organization. You know the temperament of your leadership team. You know the engagement level of your employees, and you know what will be different or what will be acceptable. So you never want to be in a position where you're making one-size-fits-all approaches and not taking into consideration things that might generally make a difference. Again, you cannot make decisions in a vacuum as an HR professional, because if you do, either on the employee side or the employer side, you can really start to shake the foundation of your own credibility. I believe that's a 2-word descriptor of how every HR leader, every HR professional should approach their work and approach their organizations. And we'll get to that toward the end of this video. But I feel that that's going to really sum up where we're going with today's conversation. So let's jump into who you serve as an HR professional. And again, we're going to cover the 2 areas that you serve primarily. And these are in no particular order. This is just the order that I chose. But I feel that these 2 areas are completely equal, but the way you go about them is different. The first area that we're going to cover is that you serve the employees. So no matter what industry you're in professionally, whether you're in healthcare, or whether you're in education, or whether you are in legal services, of course that organization may have clients or customers. So think of your employees as your internal customers. It's your responsibility as an HR professional to make sure that you are serving them. I like to think of the quote, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So you could be presenting the best policies, you could have the best engagement ideas, you could have the best ideas when it comes to compensation and benefits. But if you don't know the people that you're serving on a personal level, if you can't walk into a room and rattle off the kids' names, or walk into a room and talk about what someone did over the weekend, or walk into a room and recall a prior conversation, they know that you don't know them as a person, and they're not really going to trust what you have to add in terms of value to any changes that you want to make. You really have to make sure that you understand people as people. People want to work with people. People trust people. And again, you can't make decisions in a vacuum. So when it comes to being an HR department of one, you have the ultimate responsibility of being that light, being that person that's going to bridge that gap, because they're not going to approach you asking you about your kids' little league team. They're not going to approach you asking you about your vacation plans because you're HR. You're like the Grim Reaper when they see you coming. No, you need to change that perspective. Come into their organizations, come into their teams, come into their departments and talk to them. Let them know that you are a person. You've got feelings, you've got emotions, you have a sense of humor, you have a personality. They need to see that from you. Again, when you're serving the employees, they need to know that you yourself care about them as people. Otherwise, it's going to feel as if everything that you say is just coming up from the higher ups and they didn't even consider anything that they would think as people. Also, when you get a chance to learn the people that you serve, the employees that you serve, when you hear suggestions from senior leadership suggesting policies or suggesting changes to the way things are done, you can speak on the employee's behalf. You can talk to them and say, hey, I've talked to a person in this department, and it seems to me when I have a finger on the pulse of what's going on, I'm actually hearing this. Or, some of the feedback that I've received recently when it comes to new hire training has been this. It helps you to build your credibility as an organizational expert, a subject matter expert in the HR field. Because again, as an HR department of one, you are the HR department. So you have to make sure that you are advocating for the employees. And the best way you can do that is if you know them, you know what's important to them, you know what they care about. In addition to serving the employees, and when I say employees, I mean frontline employees, those who don't have necessarily a leadership or manager title. You also serve the leaders and the managers. So they look to you, or they should look to you, for direction, for guidance when it comes to ways to interact with their employees. So even though you don't have any direct reports as an HR department of one, you still need to make sure that you are building up your leadership skills, building up your managerial skills, so that when you are approached by that manager, who may be a first-time manager or a long-term manager who just needs some support, you can offer them guidance and advice on things that they might be able to look at things in a different perspective. When I was in HR department of one, I did not have any person reporting to me, and I had no person above me other than the CEO as well. So again, as an HR department of one, it took a while for the managers to learn to come to me when it came time for things like, I need to write this person up for this or that, or how do I approach this conversation about this person who has a hygiene issue? How do I approach the conversation about this person who doesn't agree with their evaluation? What about this person who's almost demanding a raise and there's nothing to warrant it? They're coming to you with those type of questions, and you have to be prepared to answer those questions. The only way you can do that is if you continue to build yourself up, build your toolkit, grow your own skills. Again, what we're going back to this whole series is about building your career with intention. Over these 6 weeks, we're talking about growing your career in a way that it's going to transform your career, grow your credibility, and build your experience. And the only way you can have the experience is if you go through it yourself. So even if you have not had a situation where you're having to talk to an employee about body odor, I would suggest that you figure out a way to either work with me. I can help you to figure out a way to have that conversation and create a guide for you, or figure out ways to have those conversations by handling it as sensitively as possible. That'll likely be another topic that we're going to cover later on in these next 6 weeks, but it's so important. You've got to make sure that you're prepared for anything that might happen, even if you might not even expect it. And then the third area that we're going to cover in terms of who you serve as an HR professional and HR department of one, you serve your senior leadership team. So again, whether you feel that your senior leadership team values your opinion, understands what you do on a day-to-day basis, thinks that what you do is valuable to the organization, you still serve the senior leadership team. So if you are running your metrics appropriately and you understand, okay, well, you're seeing a trend in the turnover, and maybe organizationally the turnover seems pretty consistent, but you have the data. So you know, okay, well, maybe these two departments or this one department is taking up the lion's share of the turnover. What does that mean? What's happening in that department? What is that manager doing or not doing? It's important to know when it comes to a lot of things, there's what we call recency bias, or even the halo effect. So when the halo effect is there, it's like what someone is doing something really great now, that kind of overclouds everything else. But as an HR department, as the HR department of one, you have the ability to have the numbers, the metrics. You have your finger on the true pulse of what's going on within that organization. So you need to support your senior leadership team to give them that data that they don't have front of mind. We only know what we know, and we typically know what's right in front of us. So as an HR department of one, you need to know what's happening in your workforce. How many of your employees are going to retire in the next 7 years? Do you know the answer to that? How many of your employees have been promoted over the last 5 years? If you have employees that are questioning, well, I feel like the employees never get proper consideration for positions, do you have the metrics to come back and say, well, actually, we promote from within 40% of the time or 60% of the time, well beyond benchmark? These are the things that you should know as an HR department of one so that you can support your senior leadership team and that you can be that balancing act between the employees and the organization. Again, you have to make sure that you are walking that tightrope to necessarily advocate for the employees and then also advocate on behalf of the employer. It's a tricky situation and not every person is built for it, but if you're watching these videos and you're intentionally trying to build your career with intention, I feel that you're perfect for it. So the two words that sum up the way that every HR professional should approach their jobs is this: servant leadership. You should be a servant leader in everything that you do. No job should be too big. No job should be too small. You should approach everything, every day, every instance in an offer to figure out what can you do to help someone in this situation. Whether it's a manager who's struggling to connect with one of their new team members, or whether it's an employee who's struggling with a personal situation outside of work and they really don't know what to do next. They don't know where to turn. Or maybe it's a senior leader or your CEO and they're really struggling on how can you get a handle on the recruiting issue or the people challenge that most people are handling right now. And you need to make sure that you are approaching each of those situations, even though they're drastically different, approaching it with a heart to serve. The more you serve, the more you pour out into others, the more satisfaction you'll have for your own career and the greater your career trajectory will be. You'll be positioning yourself to have a greater success within your career only based on the fact that you're helping other people. You'll be satisfied in your position. You'll feel fulfillment in your position because you're going to know that you've done a great job. You're going to know that you've actually made a difference. And as an HR department of one, it is your responsibility to be that person who's going to make that difference. So if you have any questions about anything we've covered, drop them down below. I'll be curious to figure out any way that I can help support you. If you have not already received the free guide, click the link below to grab the HR Department of One guide talking about 5 things that your HR career demands. It's going to help you to kind of categorize ways to grow your HR career with intention. Again, that is the goal of this 6-week series, this 30-day series, is to help you to figure out ways to focus on maybe areas that you want to kind of hone a little bit more, or focus on areas where you know that you need a little bit more support. I'm sure you have your sweet spot when it comes to HR, whether it's recruiting or whether it is benefits or whether it's payroll. But what are the areas where you're not as competent or where you're not as confident? Make sure that you are growing those areas, because those are going to be the areas that kind of define the way that you're going to grow your career. Hope you found this helpful. If this has helped you in any way, or if you had any aha moments that you would like to share, I'd love to hear them below. And stay tuned for the next video, where I'm going to be talking more about the HR disciplines and everything that you need to know as an HR professional. See you on the next one. Bye.